Now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Bruce Allworth from Charles Sturt University in Wagga in southern New South Wales. Bruce is himself a commercial wool producer from southern New South Wales and has recently been chairing, and still is chairing, the steering committee for the Sheep Sustainability Framework. Tonight, Bruce will give us an overview of that Sheep Sustainability Framework and how it will assist our industry to tell its story through transparency and accountability. I will now invite Bruce to share his screen. And while he is doing that, I'll remind delegates that there will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Feel free to type questions into the Q&A panel during Bruce's presentation, and then Joe Hall, our Q&A moderator, will ask Bruce some of the questions that have come through at the end. Bruce, I can see your screen and it's now over to you.
Thanks, Ed. As Ed said, I'm the chair of the Sheep Sustainability Framework Steering Group, and I'm also a veterinarian and a producer of fine wool merinos. And I just want to start at the beginning is how important that the initiative that we're talking about today is. Wool's a premium natural fibre, and importantly, sheep producers are very proud of their industry and their products, as Giovanni's just pointed out. They want to engage with everyone in their production story, and they want to show that wool is ethically and sustainably produced. And what it's all about is trust and transparency. So this is a fantastic initiative from Wool Producers Australia and Animal Health Australia. The Sheep Sustainability Framework dovetails perfectly in with what we've just been talking about. It's due for launch in April next month. It's a program that's been initiated by Wool Producers Australia and Sheep Producers Australia, and it is a sheep framework. It's not just wool. So it encompasses the whole of the sheep industry, and it's evolved from extensive industry and external consultation over the last 12 months. And it's included an independent materiality review to make sure that we've captured the most important issues in the framework. What is the aim of the framework and what does the framework involve? Well, clearly, as just been pointed out, the aim is to increase trust and transparency for the sheep industry. It's to provide robust data on material issues, and importantly, it will enable the industry to showcase sustainability and also potentially highlight areas for improvement. I would like to say that the Australian sheep industry is perfect. I don't think there's any industry that is perfect in the world. And so we'll be able to show what we do well and also identify areas for improvement. Importantly, the framework is not policy or target setting. That's the role for the industry. The role for the framework is to produce the data and measurements around what we're doing so that people can judge how well we're doing those various activities. And importantly for individual businesses, both on-farm and off-farm, it does not involve costs for individual producers. So the role of the framework is to monitor, measure and report industry performance against identified sustainability priorities. We have some definitions and a vision and a number of principles that we're working around. We've gone to a lot of effort to make sure that we're aligning with the Sustainability Development Goals from the UN, and we've gone to map those very closely. And at the present time, the framework boundary is restricted to within Australia. Clearly on farm and domestic meat processing, as the vast majority of wool is processed overseas. That won't be included at the beginning, but the vision is that that will be included down the track as we can access better quality data. But possibly going into too much detail here, but I just want to give you a bit of a flavour for what's in the framework. And there are 4 themes. As you'd expect, There's a theme around our animals that we've called Caring for Our Sheep, and it has two main focus areas. We've got a theme around enhancing the environment and climate. We've got a theme around looking after our people, and we've got a theme on producing a financially resilient industry. And they're all the key elements of sustainability around the industry and of ethical production. And you can see that we've identified the priorities against each of those themes. And there's a lot more detail that will be released in April when the final document is available. There are, amongst the indicators, we've got 42 indicators, and we're producing 75 different metrics around those indicators. So there's going to be a lot of data available. Obviously, some people are very interested in some areas and other people just want an overview. I've just given you an example of some of the things that we'll be looking at. Clearly, there's interest in the level of mulesing and the level of pain management. We're looking at things like sharing welfare and obviously greenhouse gas emissions and biodiversity. The reason I've chosen some of these is just to indicate that as we produce this framework, we don't have figures for everything yet. Getting figures on what we're doing around biodiversity, those figures don't exist at the moment. There's lots of individual projects, but as part of the framework, we're going to endeavour to produce the best quality data around all the metrics. And we've got things about occupational health and safety, the excellent working conditions on farms, and physical and mental health. And again, with physical and mental health, we haven't yet identified the best data source for that. So that is a work in progress. And we're obviously looking at the contribution of our products, both sheep, meat and wool, to the Australian economy, and the way that the quality assurance programs that are underpinning the wool. But they are just a few of the 75 metrics that we're going to report. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a feel for the sheep sustainability framework. It is a world first in terms of sustainability frameworks for sheep industries around the world. It's absolutely critical because both wool and sheep meat, lamb are premium products, and wool's a premium natural fibre. And if we can produce figures that back up the production and activities that are occurring, we believe very strongly that we can grow trust and transparency in the wool industry, which is clearly critical. So we will be providing robust data to allow everyone to have confidence in sustainability and to allow us to help identify areas for improvement. So with that short presentation, I'll just like to thank everyone for attending and open up to questions.
Much, Bruce. We're certainly looking forward to the launch of the Sheep Sustainability Framework next month. So we've got a couple of questions that have come through. The first one being, how do you see the challenges and risks of keeping the Sheep Sustainability Framework relevant in 5 and 10 years into the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I should say that we're launching the framework in April, and that's actually the beginning, not the end of the process. It's a living document, and it will only be relevant if it keeps on being reviewed and tracking what's relevant to the industry at the moment. Obviously, we don't want to chop and change all the time. We need to watch the data over some time. But if things aren't relevant, we don't need to report it, and things that we don't even know about might become relevant and we need to report that. So we're envisaging a 2-year renewal process going forward with each of the themes individually. So over a 3 or 4 year period, there will be a review of the process. But as pointed out, it's really important that we keep relevant and we keep in touch with everyone.
Thanks for that, Bruce. I've got another question here from Robert. Is there a plan to promote this initiative into our biggest customer, the Chinese industry? So far, no, there's no awareness in the industry over there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been asked a lot about the, excuse me, a lot about the communication and promotion of the framework. What we're most focused on at the moment is to produce the data reliably, and it's up to the stakeholders to then go out and use that data. So I'm very confident that once people see this framework, they'll see it as something that is very useful to promote to all areas and particularly into the Chinese industry.
Thank you. And I've just got one last quick one that's come in. So is the data going to be separated into wool, meat or sheep, or the sheep industry as a whole?
Yeah, so that's another great question. And it's where possible, we give a single figure that represents the whole of the sheep industry, but we then in the notes section underlie how we've come up with that data. So those that are only interested in the wool will be able to find that data in there. But clearly it's a combined initiative from Wool Producers Australia and Sheep Producers Australia, and we're wanting to show the whole picture. But I'm sure those that are specifically interested in wool will find all the data they want on it, and those more interested in sheep meat will find the data on it. But a lot of things like all the biosecurity, of the freedom from disease, that applies to both industries. So there's so much crossover, which is why it's a combined framework, not just a wool framework and not just a sheep meat framework.
Thanks for that, Bruce. And thank you everyone for the questions. Please keep them coming in. If you think of anything further, we will get around to answering them in the coming weeks. Thanks.